Hey guys, I'm really excited. I have Amy Engkjer with me here today. She's over in Missoula, Montana, and I know her story is going to resonate with a lot of you because she was a very busy, active, successful person running a business, teaching meditation courses, doing all these different things. But then in 2020, she got COVID, which eventually, turned into long COVID, and all of that stuff kind of came to a halt. So she's had quite the journey with this and has really done so many amazing things, not just with her own recovery, but just to help support other people as well. She founded, while she was still working on her own recovery, a nonprofit called Positively COVID, and we'll talk later what that's all about. But now through, a variety of different things that she found that works for her, she has thankfully fully recovered. So Amy, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Raelan.
I'm excited. For those of you watching, stick around to the end because with Positively COVID, Amy's nonprofit, she and her team have identified these different phases of recovery with long COVID, and there's some really helpful, really concrete stuff. So we're going to dive into that at the end. So stick around for that. But first, what happened? Tell us what your journey has been.
Oh boy. Well, as you mentioned, I was healthy. I was rocking my stained glass business, hiking, working out, fishing, camping with my husband and our dogs, and wham, got COVID. Hoped it wasn't going to be much. The girlfriend that got it at the same time, a week later, she was fine. And my symptoms were awful, just took me out completely. And then it didn't go away. And it was mainly neurological for me. I mean, I did have a cough that lasted 6 weeks, but everything hurt. Sight, sound, movement, everything. And the fatigue was unbearable. It was just debilitating. And it went on for months and months and months. So yeah, it was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. And I've been through some hard stuff before. I lost my mother and my brother both separately to sudden tragic deaths. And it's hard to explain that to people, but this was 100 times worse. I think I was facing my own mortality, right? Like I thought I'd lost the life that I knew. But fortunately, through, some amazing books and my meditation practice, I found my way through it. I found my way out. And I think initially it was so fortunate that when I got COVID, I was reading The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Doig. So I had this sort of leg up that, oh my gosh, neuroplasticity, whatever is happening to my brain, because it felt like it had gotten fried, I knew that I could recover. I just held on to that like a life raft and just kept believing that whatever I was going through and whatever was happening to my body, that I could influence my own recovery. That, and then Norman Cousins, the two Normans, who was, recovered from this debilitating illness through laughter and courage and tenacity. I implemented that into my routine, just believing that I could recover and focusing on positivity and love and kindness. And ultimately, through many other modalities, I got through it. And a year and 10 days later, I was able to say, I am done with COVID. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry you've had to go through this, and really sorry to hear about your mother and your brother. But I appreciate you sharing that because I think that's very validating for people, because this is a freaking nightmare to go through. And I think it can seem maybe from the outside to other people like, okay, yeah, that looks tough, but you think you worded it really well. It's like your life has been stolen from you. It's a really terrifying thing. Everything you imagined for your life has just come to a halt, and you don't know if it's ever going to go away. Yeah. So yeah, it's terrifying and stressful and all the things. Yeah.
Yep.
So it sounds like you got onto a good path fairly quickly, which is amazing. And I think starting out with that hope is such an important thing, because if you don't even believe recovery is possible, it's, that's going to slow things down. But I don't imagine it was just this smooth path to recovery. Like, were there some things that you tried that didn't work?
Oh, there were so many things that I tried anything and everything. And to be, totally upfront, I am not a good sick person. Like, I'm the biggest freaking crybaby. So like, it wasn't that I was like, oh, I'll just be positive and this will be just fine. I mean, it was a struggle, and I tried a lot of things and I did a lot of this. It was quite the journey. So yeah, I tried. I mean, the list is so long of supplements, of, IV treatments, of different medication. I mean, I tried it all. And ultimately, I just knew that what was happening to my brain, that it was sending these false alarm signals over and over and over, that's what I needed to learn to pause and redirect that, because I was just staying in this fight or flight pattern over and over and over again. And that's what took the most work, was learning how to show myself the way. I could learn from as many other people, but I had to learn what worked for me. And in each moment, what was coming up, whether it was a symptom or whether it triggered some past trauma, who knows, it was an opportunity for me to stop, recognize what was coming up, and redirect that over and over again, and be extremely patient and trust the path that I eventually would recover.
So it sounds like you took in the information and then adapted it and kind of made it your own to what fit. Like a lot of the people that I talk to find that they get, because there's different brain training programs and, nervous system programs out there, and they'll do one and it doesn't quite resonate, or something about it isn't a good fit. And then they'll do another one, and they'll just, trust their gut and their intuition and take pieces of it and kind of shape it into their own. So was that a bit of what your experience was like?
That was exactly it. Down to a book that I would read. I would read a book, and maybe there was one piece in that book that resonated with me, that, okay, I could apply that. That would go in the toolbox. Yeah. But maybe the rest wouldn't. And so, yeah, I did different programs. I only ultimately did one full program, and that was actually after I had recovered. I did the lightning process. But before that, because I just wanted to learn the language of the lightning process, because so many people had recovered by using that. And I think it's an amazing program. But before that, when I was still recovering, I did some neuro-linguistic programming, and it really brought that to my attention, that the language that I was using was so important. And so, yeah, a lot of different pieces of the puzzle. And I think my meditation practice was ultimately what helped keep me calm through the whole journey of being able to recognize what was working and what wasn't, because there's just so much, and we're in this just vast unknown area that's so scary, and we're grabbing at anything, and then we're getting information from doctors that may not understand where we're coming from, may, unfortunately, some dismiss what we're going through, but also just might not understand and be able to give us the right tools that we need. So we have to advocate for ourselves, and we have to really find our own way, which is, it's tough, but I really believe, having come through this and come out the other side, that I'm so much stronger for that now. That yes, I had to pull and get information from so many other people, but ultimately I found the way. I found what worked for me, and that's made me so much stronger in the end.
You mentioned meditation, and a lot of people bring up meditation. So specifically, what did that look like for you? Like, what type of meditation, or how often, what role did that play?
Well, initially, I have been meditating for years and teaching meditation, but in the beginning, it was almost impossible for me to access. And it was like beyond my capacity to access any calm because my brain and my nervous system were so, like the alarm bells were just firing and going off. I guess alarm bells don't fire. If there's fire, the alarm bells go off. So yeah, that's how it goes. But so I had to get creative with my meditation practice. And instead of meditating 30 minutes a morning, I would do just 5 minutes and just initially calming my system, which, as we know, calms the amygdala, the fight or flight. It lights up the prefrontal cortex to bring calm. And so once I got a foothold there, then I was able to access the choice. So when other symptoms started to come up, I was able to say, oh, okay, let's respond to this way rather than react the way that my body was telling me to, like, fire. It was like, no, let's respond. So I began by calming my system, and I could feel the effects of the amygdala quieting down, the fight or flight not quite as active, and the prefrontal cortex lighting up and some more calm coming in. And that's when I got a foothold. It's like, okay, this is where I needed to begin, was calming my being down before anything. And I know a lot of people think, oh, well, that's what meditation is. It's to calm down and not be stressed out. And in this case, that was the perfect first step. But that's just the first step. That is a great byproduct of meditation, is calm and reducing stress. But the fun begins after that has taken place and you've created some space. And then when symptoms are arising, I was able to respond rather than react so quickly because I was in this terrified place. So once that fun part begins and you get that foothold and you can start to choose how you're going to respond, that's so empowering, right? I mean, that's when we can really influence the direction that we go. And those neural pathways begin to form in the way that we want them to. So that choice is paramount. So calming the brain and then watching things arise and recognizing, okay, as these things are coming up, how do I want to respond to this? And that's where we'll see, I think, a lot of change. And that's where I noticed, and I had been practicing this for years, but boy, was it really put to the test with this, all of this coming up. Then ultimately, I think that after we have calmed our system down, we're learning how to interrupt these patterns that are happening and guiding them in a different, more positive, kind, loving, responsive way. Then we really see, hopefully, the true nature of our reality and can kind of loosen the grip to this identity that we're gripping so tightly to. And especially when we're sick, oh my gosh, that identity is being like pulled and ripped away from us, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm losing everything that I've ever worked for, that I've ever thought that I was going to be doing. And then there's pushing away all these symptoms that are coming up and all the pain and discomfort. So you're in this constant struggle of pushing and pulling and really ultimately allowing everything to just belong and be as it is and surrender to it is when I know for me was one of the biggest turning points in my recovery of really stopping the fight, the struggle that I had been in. And I think it's once we're at that place that we can really think about what matters most to us and what we spending time with the people that we love and that celebrate us. And otherwise, I think we're just stay caught up in so much. I mean, we're typically, most people are caught up in the distractions of life. It's so fast paced. There's so much going on. But then when you have long COVID, oh my gosh, like it is just compounded 1 billion times over. So it's so much more important at that time to really become centered and mindful and be in the present moment, so you can have that opportunity to choose the direction that you want to go.
Yeah, you've explained that really well. A lot of people talk about meditation and how it's really helpful, but very few people can articulate it the way that you just did, because they're not meditation teachers, likely, so understandably. So it's, yeah, I think a lot of us take for granted all of the benefits that can come from meditation. I know I did for years. I thought of it more like of just a relaxation thing and a calming myself down. But when I finally took a course and got really serious with it, it's amazing how many things it addresses and the ripple effect it has on the rest of your day. So yeah, it's really helpful to understand. I know people talk a lot about pacing with recovery from long COVID and similar conditions. And I know that was an aspect of your recovery as well. So what did that look like?
I think pacing is so personal. It's a bit tricky because the word pacing in itself, I think, can be triggering for people, and they feel that they have to be careful in how they move through the day, which it's going to be different for everybody. But I think if we can gradually move into new experiences, that's without kind of enabling an oversensitivity. I think that's the most important piece of pacing. You have to show yourself the way each moment. But it's very, very nuanced, right? It's a slippery slope. If something comes up and you say, oh gosh, I can't do that, I only have so much energy for the day, you are cementing that belief in those neural pathways, and that's the path you're going to go down. And your brain says, oh, these are our instructions. Okay, I can only do so much. If those symptoms come up and you say, I hear you, brain, you're saying that there's danger, but you know what? There's not. We're okay. And you ease into that experience, that bit of exercise, that conversation that might be triggering, you will over time show yourself the way that it's okay. And I just had to do that in every step. I mean, I'd pull a weed. I remember the first time yanking a weed, and that yank, the weed was probably only this deep, the roots were, and it put me in bed the rest of the day. And then the next time, yank, and it was like, okay, you're okay. Maybe only put me in bed for half a day. And over time, I had to just show myself. And I used these worksheets too that I have on the website that were great. And I think for some people, it could be a tool that might cause more hypersensitivity. But it was a color-coded sheet that you wrote in during the day. Okay, this is what I did, and it was this exercise, and it was red, and red meant that it was strenuous, a lot of exercise, and green was a mental exercise. And then over time, I was able to see what actually was maybe bringing up or triggering more fatigue in me that would not have otherwise a year before. And one of the funny things I found was talking on the phone was like, that's when I had my biggest crashes. And it turned out to be this like triple threat. One, I was walking around the house because I pace when I'm on the phone. Not that kind of pacing. I pace around the house. And so I'm moving, and then I'm likely talking to a family member or friend about being sick. So that's emotional. And then I'm not breathing. People don't breathe very well when they're talking. They don't stop and take deep breaths. So I really learned a lot from that. And that became just another way for me to gain awareness. I can see how some people be like, oh, okay, I can't talk on the phone, or I can't walk up and down stairs, because that was another one for me. No, those then became opportunities for me to use these tools and to work with what was coming up and redirect this initial reaction that my body was saying, watch out. I was like, no, you're okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. So many people tell me that pacing in some version helped them with their recovery, but there's definitely a decent number of people that when they list the things that didn't work for them, it was pacing. And it's always explained to me that they were following some system or program that was giving them something very rigid, and they'd set their plan. I'm like, okay, I can sit up for 10 minutes a day. Oh, but today I sat up for 12 minutes. And then they get all stressed out and I'm going to get worse. So, and I've heard pacing referred to as many different things. Like, I think that it is a lot of different things that we don't always think of as that because we're not calling it that. You know, like I interviewed someone who referred to it as gradual exposure therapy. It's just, generally slowly, exposing yourself to more things, and with those messages of safety and teaching your brain and your body it's okay. And even my exercise or my movement program that I did when I was recovering, starting with 1 minute a day and then going up to 2 minutes a day, was just a version of pacing. It was just, slowly increasing my activity levels. So I think when it's used in a way that is not rigid, doesn't make you scared of life, and has the goal of not just teaching you how to exist within your current limitations, but is also a way to slowly expand those, is when it can be really helpful. And I actually put together an online course that people can do for free. I can link it in the video description if you want to check it out. Because I found that a lot of the stuff that was out there felt a little bit too like learning to live with your illness and very rigid. And I liked, the approaches that were more about, had more flexibility and were more recovery focused, which it sounds like, which is on your website as well. So it's great that there's so many more resources for people out there now.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, you nailed it, right? Like and I say to people, you have to show yourself the way. You can't fall in one specific plan because it's going to be different for everybody. And it's so nuanced, and can be that slippery slope that you have to be careful to pay attention and do what works for you, and listen to your body, but don't listen to the false alarms. It's so hard, right? It's like, oh, which one do I listen to?
I know. It is confusing, isn't it? Like, listen to your body always. Like, don't worry, you're fine.
Yeah.
But you do, I mean, it sounds on the surface like it's quite confusing, but you do start to get there. It's,
you do.
Recognizing what is your brain, what is your nervous system, maybe just, trying to protect you and sending you some symptom flares, and then versus, what is different.
Yep, exactly.
So tell me about Positively COVID. How did that even start? Where did this come from, and what is it?
Well, so when I had COVID, my husband Corey and I were seeking information wherever we could. It was 2020, so of course it was there wasn't much on long COVID, and what there was awful. And anything on COVID was just horrific. And I don't want to minimize the horrific nature of the lives that were lost and the suffering that was occurring, but we couldn't find anything hopeful. And I knew that not only was it just, bringing me down, it was harming me. I mean, we know that what we think, how we behave, and what we're exposed to has a biological consequence in our bodies. So I knew, okay, I need to expose myself to positive things. So I really tried to flood myself with positive, hopeful information. And I thought, and I had this meditation background, so I had this great basket of tools. I thought, what are other people doing out there that don't have any of these tools or don't have any of this access? So I thought, well, I'll just start a little one-page website and offer some meditations. And that's how Positively COVID was born. Now, it was initially just to do that. It turned into quite a bit more. It's now a global nonprofit. We offer interviews with experts, meditations. I talk about the different phases of COVID that I think people might fall in. There are 3 phases that I talk about on Positively COVID's website, which is I have COVID, I have long COVID, and life after COVID, because that's just a great thing for people to know, that there is life after COVID, life after long COVID especially. And in those 3 phases, I talk about the 3 pillars that were essential for me to get through each day, which was my mindset, rest, or how I moved through the day, nutrition, and movement, exercise. And so in each of those phases, I talk about those things. I have interviews, I have recovery stories, which I think is probably the most important part to me of the whole site, because there's that evidence, right, that people do recover. And when people can see that and say, oh, people then do recover, that instills that hope within them. And unfortunately, the World Health Organization did a systematic review of over 1,700 studies that have been done on long COVID. And unfortunately, a very, very small percent are studies on the recovered population. They're mainly studies on people that are still hospitalized or still in primary care help. So they're not the ones that have recovered. And so I think it's just that much more important for people to get exposure to the people that have recovered and to see those stories. The site spends most of my energy I put into the site. All of it is about hopeful recovery, possibilities, positivity. I don't talk much about symptoms. I think it's really important that people don't spend as much time talking about their symptoms, which fire those neural pathways in the brain. Even the Mayo Clinic now is saying what part of their protocol is decrease focus on symptoms. So I spend more time just trying to be that positive source that I wasn't able to access when I had long COVID. And I know there are many paths, many ways, and this is just one offering that I wanted to give to the world.
Oh, really amazing. This is so helpful. I think this is so great. And I was interviewed recently by a medical doctor in Canada on her channel, and she asked, if you had however much funds to put into research, where would you put it? And this is my answer, like what you said, go to the people who have recovered. Start there. Like do what you and I are doing, but in a more systematic kind of scientific qualitative research way, and start gathering that information, and then let that guide where your research goes from there. Like get out of the lab and go to the people who have figured it out. Because like some of these, I think the UK has put like 1 billion or something into long COVID research, and I don't think they've come up with much of anything so far. But there's people with answers, and there's people that are getting better, and we're out here working together, which is amazing, helping each other out and sharing our experiences. But we shouldn't have to go to YouTube to get our answers.
Right? We
should be able to get it. Yeah.
Yeah, we should be able to get it, and doctors need to be informed about the mind-body connection. I mean, they are aware, but I just don't think it's part of the protocol. And we know that results often fall in line with our expectations. So if we're not seeing the evidence out there in studies and just on YouTube, then we don't have that guiding, that North Star. The recovery stories that you have are just, I know that people just are so grateful. And it's good stuff.
So we talk a lot about how important mindset is, and we need to stay optimistic. And it's all very easy to say and can sound very vague. And I know this is an important part of many people's journeys, and it was yours. So like on a day-to-day basis, what did that look like for you?
Okay. Well, my daily practice is so important. It's like, drinking water and eating food and sleeping and shelter. Like it is crucial that I implement a certain practice. When I do, I feel so much better. And so we know that whatever we do to get dopamine first thing in the morning is what our brains will seek to get dopamine from the rest of the day. So like if we start the day scrolling, and that's how, then our brain wants to do more of that. Or like with sugar, we get that glucose spike. So then we're kind of chasing after that. So I think that the morning routine of self-care is paramount. So for me, I wake up and the first thing I think of is, how do I want to feel today? And that's, maybe where this pacing piece comes in. And again, I want to be careful with that word pacing, but okay, I've got all this energy. How do I want to feel? This is how I want to feel today. I want to feel great. So then I make my to-do list. I don't have a to-do list and then say, oh, I've got to match that. So we'll all have our to-do lists, but we can guide ourselves how we want to move into our day. We can say, hey, I'm not going to operate at the pace that society is imposing on me today. I'm going to move into this day with ease, with patience, with trust. So setting that intention first thing in the day and the language that I use is critical. The second thing I do is I hydrate right away. I drink a big glass of water first thing in the morning. That sort of hydrates me from the inside out before I drink my coffee. So I'm telling myself, hey, this is more important to bring hydration to my body, and the first step in nutrition for me. And then I meditate, which brings me to that place of calm and centered, sets the tone for the day. I don't turn my phone on until about 15 minutes after I've meditated. I get up and I sort of transition into my day from my meditation. So it kind of goes from a meditation into a little bit of a walking meditation just around the house before I turn on the phone. And then I walk. I go for a dog walk every morning in nature. And it's the days I don't do it, it's a big difference. I notice it. So walking, as we know, one, brings blood flow throughout our entire body and especially our brain. Second, as Norman Doig, the neuroscientist, said, when primitive people walked initially from one place to another, whether it was to get more food or from a predator, their brains were adapting to that need to go someplace else. And that's when new brain cells were created. So I think about that when I'm walking every morning, like, okay, come on, get those brain cells, building more brain cells, because we know it happens. And then third, I feel as though it just assimilates the intention that I had set in the morning. There's that bilateral stimulation of right, left. And so if you're thinking happy thoughts, you're thinking about your intention as you're walking. For me, it seems to just sort of cement it into my day. So those are the most important parts of my morning. I then throughout the day just try to access as much joy as I can, surround myself with people that love me and celebrate me, and do things that please me and bring me joy. And I try to find elevated states to connect to. We know that trauma resides in every cell in our body, and we can counteract that and do almost the opposite by having accessing and bringing up elevated states within us. I have called it joy shocking before. And one thing I'll do is when I'm taking a shower, I turn the water to ice cold at the end. And as it's getting colder and colder and colder, I turn and I start singing Florence and the Machine's song, "It's hard to dance with the devil on your back, so shake it out," like as loud as I can. And I know it sounds totally off key. In fact, I know it does, because at one point my husband rushed in thinking I had fallen and was crying out. But oh my gosh, I just feel it throughout my entire body, just access those elated, elevated states. And I think that it makes a big difference for me. I'll feel like a different person after doing that. So
I love it, because I do the cold water in my showers too, and I do ice baths. And I'd read studies that when people immerse their hand in ice water, they can do it longer if they're smiling. So when I do my ice baths, I put music on and I keep a smile on my face the whole time. But I haven't tried the singing in the shower, so I don't have a shower practice. So yeah, watch out, Jeffrey. Yeah, I should warn him. I'm not injured.
Yeah, right, there you go.
I'm just singing.
I love it. Yeah, my husband, he's been cold plunging for some years, and he started a group in Missoula called the Missoula Cold Soakers, going and soaking in the rivers in the middle of winter, like breaking the ice out. And the motto, or the subtext is, we love group soaks. It takes a minute to realize, but yeah, we try to have as much fun when we're doing it.
Oh, I love it. Oh, really great. Well, I'm so glad you have fully made it past this. It sounds like this is, really transformed your life, and you've taken away so many good things from it. And not only that, you're now helping so many other people. So for people watching, I really encourage you to go to her website. It is incredible. I spent quite a bit of time there myself, positivelycovid.org, and it'll also be in the video description. So lots of great stuff there. And also, I know it's a lot to take in with all these recovery interviews. So another link just to let you know about, because not everybody knows. When you're watching these videos, I know you miss a lot of them and it's hard to take them all in. So I summarize all of this in my weekly email newsletters. So if you miss this one or a different one, you just get bullet points of like what worked for people, what didn't, key resources that they have, and what got them there. So you can sign up for that if you haven't already in the video description. But thank you, Amy. This has been absolutely incredible. I'm so glad we've connected. I think you're such an amazing person. Your energy is so contagious. I have learned so much from you, and I know other people are as well. So thank you for doing this today, and just for everything that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much, Raelan. I just look to you and admire you so much, and I'm so grateful for everything that you share. And thank you so much for having me and letting me share my story and talk with you.
Absolutely. And to those of you watching, as always, would love to hear your thoughts and your comments. I love how we're all working together on this and sharing all the knowledge and slowly figuring more and more of, these puzzle pieces out. So thank you again, Amy. Thank you to those of you who are watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope to see you in this next video.